Pitch Black gives us 10 new EXs to mess around with. Today I'm going to rank all of them and provide deck lists if you want to try these cards out for yourself. I'm gonna go real in depth, so I won't bother making a super long intro here. In dead last place, I unfortunately have to include Morpeko EX. I should clarify that this ranking is entirely in terms of gameplay, because if we were ranking these cards on just about any other aspect, I think Morpeko would be a lot higher. Anyway, Morpeko EX is a basic darkness type Pokemon with 180 HP. For 1 darkness, Wheelie Draw shuffles your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. For 2 darkness, Hangry Blaster does 40 damage plus 40 more for each damage counter on Morpeko. This card is honestly pretty close to being good. Wheelie Draw is honestly a good attack, it's just not worth using a frail 2-prizer for only this attack alone. However, we also have Hangry Blaster. This attack for only 2 darkness can do some pretty big damage if you can get enough damage on Morpeko. If you can get enough damage on Morpeko. This card has 180 HP. Every half-competent deck has a way to one-hit KO this card. Your opponent, if they know what they're doing, will never attack Morpeko until they have the OHKO, meaning you have to place damage on Morpeko yourself. The obvious answer here is just to use Toxtricity. However, I think decks that are playing Toxtricity already have better options. If you really wanted to, you could also use maybe the Emolga from Twilight Masquerade. This card is funny because it's also another Pikachu clone, but it puts damage on your opponent's board while also setting up Morpeko. Still, by the time you're hitting good numbers, you'll easily be knocked out by your opponent's follow-up. And while Hero's Cape can help, since it's an A-spec, you're only going to use this card once per game, unless you can recycle the Hero's Cape with a card like Dedenne, which is, funnily enough, another Pikachu clone. Hang on, am I cooking up the deck of the summer? Here is a deck that won a Japanese tournament featuring Morpeko EX. It looks like your standard Tox box until you see the Mega Gengars and the Grimsley's moves. There's no way to stack the deck in this list, you're literally just hoping to get lucky. I don't think this is good, unfortunately. Morpeko is a funny card, but even the other bad cards on this list at least have the potential to be good with further supports. This card's potential is capped out, and it's not exactly reaching the highest highs. At least it has the best SIR. Speaking of potential, in 9th place is Zeraora. I don't really care for Mega Zeraora already, and the fact that its card is so terrible doesn't help things out very much. Mega Zeraora EX is a basic lightning type mega with 270 HP. For 1 lightning energy, Thunderous Fist does 60 damage times the number of lightning energy attached to this Pokemon. For 3 lightning energy, Zeptoturn does 150 damage. It makes you switch Zeraora with one of your bench Pokemon. I don't think I need to explain why Zeptoturn is a bad attack. Thunderous Fist, on the other hand, could be kind of crazy, except you do need to get a bunch of lightning energy attached to this thing. This is just too much investment to really do anything meaningful. 270 HP is good for a basic, but it's honestly kind of mediocre by basic mega standards. Additionally, you really need like 4 or 5 energy to hit the important one-hit KOs, and you don't really have the acceleration to do that outside of Magneton exactly. But even with Magneton, I feel like I'd rather just play Mega Manectric. Maybe if you want to be funny, you can play a deck with like 4 Cinderace, 2 of this, a bunch of Mega Signal and Lightning Energy and whatever, but I just think charging this thing up is a bit more hassle than it's worth. There are, however, several unique winning Japanese deck lists for Zeraora. Some are pairing it with Iono's Bellibolt, but using a card like Scramble Switch to move that energy onto Zeraora. Others are pairing it with Mega Electros or Magneton or doing whatever this is. I don't think it's ever really worth it, but the point is here, if you want to play a deck around Mega Zeraora, you absolutely can. Don't let anyone stop you from following your dreams. In 8th, I'm putting Mega Delphox EX. This might be disappointing because I was hyped for this card too, but I think on further evaluation, this is where this goes. Mega Delphox EX is a stage 2 fire type EX with 350 HP. For 1 fire, Trick Portal looks at the top 9 cards of your deck and puts as many Pokemon you find there as you like onto your bench. For a fire and Ducarlis, Eerie Glow does 200 damage and burns and confuses the opponent's active Pokemon. So I think the main appeal for this card is Trick Portal. Tatsugiri EX has a similar attack in Cinnabar lore, but the energy cost there is kind of unreasonable. This only costs a fire energy. The issue I have with this card is that Reuniclus also exists. Reuniclus for 1 Carlos can use Summoning Gate to look at the top 8 and do the exact same thing. And quite frankly, if Reuniclus isn't seeing any use, I don't see why putting the same attack on a 3-prizer would make it much better. I think the main issue with this card is that Trick Portal is just way too slow. Like, sure, you can stack your deck with Cyber Maniac or Academy of Night or whatever, but even in a best case scenario, you play down your Fennekin, you evolve it next turn, then you use Trick Portal, you put a bunch of stuff on your bench, and only on the turn after that can you finally start playing the game. I just think that's way too slow to really matter. That said, this card does have 350 HP, so perhaps it's just bulky enough to allow you to take things a little bit slower, but I'm really not convinced. Additionally, Eerie Glow I don't think should be written off entirely, but I do think if you want to use an attack that burns, Incineroar is just better. Anyway, here's a deck list that I think looks pretty good though. While this deck can use Trick Portal, it's not exactly what you're going for here. The goal with this deck is to use Chaos Rising Delphox's Energized Storm to do 30 damage for each energy attached to all Pokemon. Mega Delphox EX is just the easiest fire-type Mega to throw down, enabling Oricorio EX's energy acceleration. Here's another winning deck list, which once again doesn't really rely on Trick Portal, though it can use it. This really is like an Emboar Cinccino EX type of deck that also plays Chaos Rising Delphox as a draw engine, but Mega Delphox is here and it's not a terrible option if you have it available. Lastly though, we have this deck list. This deck is every single fully evolved fire type starter Pokemon jammed into one deck list. Here, Trick Portal is an essential part of our strategy to get as many of these fire starters from our deck onto the bench as possible. We do also play the full Ethan Typhlosion line just because it is a solid attacker, but anyway, this is a really cool and novel deck list. I will reiterate, every single deck I'm showing today has won some kind of Japanese tournament, which I think goes to show that if you have enough dedication, you can really win with just about anything, at least on the local level. In 7th, I'm choosing to put Lurantis EX. Lurantis EX is a stage 1 grass Pokemon with 260 HP. For 1 grass energy, Lively Cutter does 60 damage, and if this Pokemon healed during this turn, this attack does 200 more damage. Meanwhile, Leaf Cutter for a grass Nicalis is 140 damage and reduces incoming damage by 50 during your opponent's next turn. Grass types are pretty good right now, so Lurantis does have that going for it. But that's also the issue. Grass has so much going for it that I think Lurantis is just outclassed. If Lurantis was healed during this turn, it can do 260 for 1 energy, which is really good. But first of all, moving damage with Munkidori does not count as healing. I want to get that out of the way first because this card would be a lot better if it did. That said, you probably still want to use Munkidori with this card just because it provides healing and increases your damage output at the same time. It's pretty good with this type of strategy. So how are we actually going to heal this card? Well, the Whimsicott from Temporal Forces fully heals Lurantis but discards all energy from it. But that really isn't a big deal when you only need 1 energy anyway. The issue with that is that it only works once. You probably need some way to consistently heal every single turn. Shuckle for Mega Evolution is, I suppose, an option, but Community Center is a lot funnier and honestly might be better. The other major weakness of this deck is that a lot of decks can just swing for over 260 anyway if they get set up enough, and some can even break through that 310 barrier that Leaf Guard gets you. Growing Grass Energy is a very nice inclusion here, and this is also a card that can make a very nice use of Hero's Cape. If there is any such thing as a standard Lurantis list, it probably looks like this. We have Lurantis, a Dunsparce draw engine, your healing resources, and a Psyduck so you don't get owned by Dusknoir. This other list here is literally just Hydrapple with Lurantis thrown in. You can play this too, I guess, but I really don't see what Lurantis provides that Hydrapple doesn't already do. I guess it's a cornerstone answer, but just play Tapu Bulu, come on. I think the 6th best EX in the set is Wailord EX. To be honest, you could maybe switch this card around with Lurantis, but I'm not really sure. Wailord EX is a stage 1 water Pokemon with a massive 380 HP. For 3 water energy, Surf does 120 damage. And for 5 water energy, Falling Down does 270 and puts this Pokemon to sleep. This is probably going to be one of the more popular cards from the set just because it's really funny. Wailord has finally reclaimed its crown of having the highest HP value, tying with Mega Venusaur. Of course, Wailord only gives out 2 prizes compared to Venusaur's 3. Falling Down is a very expensive attack and it puts you to sleep, but Misty's Vitality will immediately pay for 4 of those energy costs, and the 5th can be fulfilled using Bubbly Energy, which also prevents that sleep from getting to you. From there, cards like Jumbo Ice Cream can help you stay healthy. I think this strategy is mostly pretty straightforward. Here's a pretty funny Wailord list. After taking a hit with Wailord, simply bring in Ninetales to move that damage onto the opponent's active Pokemon. Here's, I guess, a more clean Wailord list though. Kofu feels a little out of place here, though I guess you can put water energy on the bottom of your deck so you can get it with Misty later, maybe. Really, it looks like the point of this deck is just to jump around everywhere with all of your Wailords to sponge up all of your opponent's hits, and in the meantime use cards like Munkidori to move that damage onto the opponent's board. At the halfway point in the ranking, I'm going to put Mega Slowbro EX. Mega Slowbro EX is a stage 1 psychic Pokemon with 330 HP. And for 3 Psychic Energy, Shelnado Spin does 180 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, if this Pokemon takes damage from an attack, put 12 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. The main reason this card is as far up as it is because Slowking is a serious competitive deck. And of course, you can also evolve Slowpoke into Mega Slowbro. This is specifically a very nice option that basically auto-wins against Festival Lead. Still though, Festival Lead has kind of fallen off a cliff in popularity recently, making Slowbro feel almost obsolete. Instead of just showing you a standard Slowking list with Slowbro teched in, I'd rather show you the hard work of the few brave souls who have tried to turn Mega Slowbro into its own individual deck. This first deck I think is pretty cool. Clefairy and Diancie are a powerful duo in a Dragon Ball dominated metagame already, so who's to say we can't just let Slowbro join in on the fun? This other deck though is a literal pile of Psychic type cards. I actually think Dusknoir complements Slowbro quite nicely. It means that after swinging for that 180, your opponent can't just retreat and attack with something else to stop the KO from coming in. Dusknoir will hunt down anything that tries to hide away on the bench. Both of these lists are pretty cool, but maybe it's because I'm just a sucker for Psychic types. Next in line is Rampardos EX. The fact that any fossil Pokemon could get this high is impressive, but that's just how good Fossil Quarry is. Rampardos EX is a stage 2 fighting type Pokemon with 330 HP. Its ability, Destructive Headbutting, says once during your turn if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy from the opponent's active Pokemon. For 2 fighting, Rowdy Hammer does 150 damage, and during your next turn, attacks used by this Pokemon deal 150 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Obviously, this card is designed to be paired up with the Bastiodon from the set. However, there are a number of issues. Destructive Headbutting is a strong ability if you hit heads, but that's only a 50% chance, and there will certainly be games that you lose just because you flip tails at a crucial moment. Rowdy Hammer is honestly awkward as well. 2 fighting is not a great energy cost, there's not many good ways to accelerate here, and you should not be pairing this card with Mega Lucario. Additionally, 150 is very low damage. Sure, it becomes 300 in subsequent turns, but that's only assuming Rampardos stays in the active. If your opponent uses a card like Boss's Orders to gust up your benched Bastiodon, not only does Bastiodon's ability go away because it only works on the bench, but the bonus from Rampardos' Rowdy Hammer goes away as well. Plus, Bastiodon has a very huge retreat cost, so unless you have a card like Surfer or Magnet Metal Energy, seeing that Bastiodon get gusted up at all will kind of be game over. I know it sounds like pretty much everything I've said so far has been kind of negative, but I'm only doing it because I love the card. Here's a deck list. So, the important thing to note is that the Fossil Trainer cards are not startable basics. Cinderace is a startable card, but not a basic. As per the rules of the game, we do need to play at least one startable basic in our deck, so this deck list settles for Mega Kangaskhan. You can switch this out with whatever else you want, Relicanth or Shaman or maybe Delibird or something stupid like that, but the point is here, assuming you do open and lead the Cinderace, which you are very likely to do, this deck is insane, because quite frankly Cinderace is just insane energy acceleration. We do also unfortunately have to play Grand Tree. This card has screwed me over more times than it's helped, but we're running 2 different stage 2 lines that don't even have good stage 1s, so this is kind of what we have to do. Pretty much every Rampardos deck looks something like this, so we'll stick with the one for now. Anyway, now we move into our top 3. Mega Chandelure EX is a card that will get much better after rotation, but even right now I still think it gets 3rd place. Mega Chandelure EX is a Psychic type stage 2 with 350 HP. Its ability Binding Flame increases the retreat cost of the opponent's active Pokemon by 1 colorless. And Phantom Maze for 2 Psychic does 130 damage plus 50 more for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. So even against Pokemon that have a retreat cost of 0, this is swinging for 180. But really, we can reasonably expect this card to swing for 230 or 280 most of the time, assuming you only have one Chandelure in play. You see, the Lampent from Pitch Black can use Spreading Light to place a ton of Lampent from your deck onto your board. With this, it's really not unreasonable to set up 2, 3, or maybe even all 4 Mega Chandelures at once. With 3 Chandelure, we're doing 280 damage against a Pokemon with a retreat cost of 0. A lot of the bigger, bulkier cards have larger retreat costs, so this attack's damage will naturally fix itself. The main issue this card faces right now is Latias EX. Latias completely eliminates the retreat cost on basic Pokemon. Even Chandelure's own ability is ignored here. If Latias is in play, you're only doing 130 to your opponent's basics. Once rotation comes around though, not only does the power level drop, but Latias leaves the formats, leaving Chandelure in a much better spot. Here's your first deck list, which I think is actually quite nice. Fluttermane allows you to gust in Latias and negate its ability, leaving Latias kind of trapped in the active. LGM helps you take advantage of the retreat lock by moving energy around to your opponent's bench Pokemon, and Marshadow is kind of a single prize Chandelure with its attack. Here's a different approach, which I also like a lot. The fire type Chandelure and Comfey both make your opponent draw cards, then Zeraora gets rid of those cards. This is more of a control style build aiming to win via deck out. Lastly, this list here pairs Chandelure with Jellicent, two Gen 5 ghost types, or I guess they're psychic types in this case, but comboing item lock with an increased retreat cost is absolutely diabolical. I love it. If you want to inflict as much pain as possible onto your opponent, Chandelure easily takes number 1. In second, I'll put the cover card of the set, Mega Darkrai EX. Mega Darkrai is a basic darkness type Pokemon with 280 HP. For 2 darkness, Night Ray does 110 damage, and if any of your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, this attack does 110 more damage. But for 3 darkness, Abyss Eye instantly knocks out your opponent's active Pokemon if it has a special condition on it. This card honestly reads kind of insane, especially when you factor in Dark Bell as an item to instantly confuse the opponent's active Pokemon, assuming it isn't a dark type. However, this card hasn't really hit its stride yet. It's pretty clearly designed to be paired up with Toxtricity, which can charge up Night Raid as well as put some damage on a bench Pokemon to allow for that 220 swing. And 220 is fine, it OHKOs the Ogarpons, it OHKOs Phesantipides, and it's also not too hard to trigger consistently thanks to all the setup you have. But we're really using this card for Abyss Eye. Comboing it with Dark Bell allows you to knock out whatever's in front of you no matter how much health it has. You do lose to certain cards like Mist Energy or Rocky Fighting Energy, so we also probably want to play some amount of Enhanced Hammer to cover that. But otherwise, this is a very cool card that will only get better as more 3 prize megas are added to the game. This first list is probably close to what you'd expect with Darkrai. Chi-Yu for just 1 darkness does 110 damage if it has 20 or more damage on it. To be honest, I'm not totally sure of the use case for this, but it seems to be a pretty popular card in these types of decks. I think the biggest obstacle for Darkrai right now is that it's extremely similar to Mega Absol, and so it has tough competition that the other EXs on this list don't really have. This second deck list, however, is something that only Mega Darkrai can fit into. This kind of looks like a very colorful pile of cards at first, but the idea behind this deck is to use Volcanion EX to burn the opponent. So just burn, bring in Darkrai, and Abyss Eye, take that knockout. It's really cool and certainly the more unique way to play Mega Darkrai. I'll admit, I don't really like that Janine is our only form of acceleration here. You'll probably need a few turns just to get Darkrai up to the right energy count, but oh well. The absolute best of the new Megas though is Excadrill. Mega Excadrill EX is a stage 1 metal Pokemon with 340 HP. For 2 metal, Undermine does 90 damage and discards the top 2 cards of the opponent's deck. But for 3 metal, Maximum Drilling does 200 damage and does 130 more if Excadrill has 5 metal energy attached. This card honestly doesn't look like much at first. Undermine is a funny mill attack, but it's only okay. 3 for 200 isn't great, and 330 for 5 is good damage, just a bit expensive. However, we have Metal Maker Metang in this format. Metang really is one of the craziest forms of energy acceleration in the format right now, and people have tried using it with just about any Pokemon that could theoretically benefit from it. Excadrill is the first of these beneficiaries to be able to consistently punch for 330, and not needing to discard energy or pay any other kind of cost is greatly appreciated. Metang is Regulation H, so Excadrill is poised to become unplayable after rotation, in contrast to the other EXs here, which will mostly get better. But still, upon release, this is the most powerful and impactful of the new EXs, so I think it's earned its spot at number 1. Here is your standard Mega Excadrill deck list. This is, again, just Excadrill and Metang gaming. Genesect searches out your evolutions, while Transceiver gets Petrol, which gets Trolley, which gets all of the basics you've ever dreamed of. Even if you don't open so high, Drillbur having Call for Family is actually really nice for this deck specifically. The most common card that isn't in this list that others are using is Mega Skarmory, who, for 3 metal, hits anything on the board for 220, which is really nice for knocking out Phesantipides or other bench sitters. And the downside is shuffling that energy back into the deck, which only increases the likelihood that Metal Maker hits something in your next turn. Really, you could probably slot in just about any Pokemon that likes Metal Acceleration and by extension Colorless Acceleration into this deck list, but despite that fact, I couldn't find a single list pairing Excadrill with Orthworm. Be sure to comment which card from this set is your favorite and why it's the Toucannon. Oh my gosh, this guy is goated. Anyway, thank you, bye bye.